Season 1, Episode 10. Welcome to Forever Break Podcast. Now, the dynamic duo that dreads diarrhea. Here are your hosts, Lianne and Corey.
Hello, and welcome to the 10th episode of the Forever Break Podcast.
Double digits, baby.
We made it. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you. We are going to be touching on all things healing and naturopathic medicine on this episode. A lot of stuff about what are we putting into our body and what effect does it have.
How the use of foods and supplements can decrease our dependency on things like medications, and how Big Pharma has changed that idea. We've then got a discussion with Dr. Karen DeVore, who is a naturopathic doctor and the chief medical advisor to Okuma Nutritionals.
Yep, really good interview. Stick around for that. As always, be sure to check out the Forever Break website
foreverbreak.com
to take an even deeper dive into these topics.
Quick quote.
The art of healing comes from nature, not from the physician. Therefore, the physician must start from nature with an open mind. By Paracelsus, not Paris Hilton.
Focus on.
You know that expression, there's an app for that? Mm-hmm. Well, the same can be said for our medical industries, who seem to have the motto, there's a pill for that. So we at Forever Break try to be solution-based rather than spending our time pointing fingers and moaning about what is happening. So instead of going off on a big rant about Big Pharma, because trust me, we could, we just simply ask that you guys take the time to question the motive behind a health decision or recommendation.
Yeah, who benefits by you being dependent on a medication long-term? How many other additional medications are needed to treat side effects? What is the first priority of big pharma companies as instituted by law? I'll give you a little bit of tip. Has got nothing to do with health, and it rhymes with the word bear holders.
Snare holders.
You're close.
It's very hunting related. But our body's natural state is to be healthy. It's designed to heal itself, although sometimes it needs a little bit of help. Although it might not be as much as you might think. We understand the negative impacts of our modern diet, rich in sugars and highly processed ingredients, and there's so many chronic conditions that can be caused or aggravated by the food you put into your mouth, which I'm sure you remember from episode 9. If not, go check that out.
Yeah, Lianne, you can really speak to that with the old IBS thing.
I can, literally. Gluten intolerant, all of these things. I really notice what I'm eating these days.
It's very tricky for her because pretty much anything that she puts into her system has some sort of effect. So she's just got to be mindful and try and balance it out, really.
Yeah, not the easiest.
No. But did you guys know that modern medication as we know it has only been around since the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century?
Nuh-uh.
Since the early 1900s, up to 99% of base ingredients of pharmaceuticals, it's petroleum-based.
Oh my God.
Before that, there were some wacky methods to treat illnesses. Doctors in the Middle Ages drained their patients of blood using leeches in an attempt to cure fevers and anything else that stumped them. Cue Roose Bolton fans for you Game of Thrones book lovers out there.
Yeah. I hope you're all Game of Thrones book lovers. But the original method of treating ailments for thousands of years was medicinal plants and herbs that grow natively in many countries. In Western culture, we consider this Eastern medicine today because it was widely suppressed in the West.
Yeah, if you're having some health issues, is it best just to take a prescribed medication that you don't know much about, or should you at least consider that there might be a natural remedy or ongoing practice that you could utilize to heal as well? Does a pain medication tell you the source of your aches and pains, or does it simply mask the discomfort until it goes away, if it goes away at all?
These are all the kind of questions that we should be asking if we're interested in healing. So what if those ongoing headaches you have could simply be from dehydration? Wouldn't you rather just drink 2 more glasses of water every day versus taking aspirin and worrying about what that actually might be doing to your gut?
Yeah, that stuff is not good down there. So if you're going to take it, definitely eat something first. We're not saying that this is an easy change. It definitely is not. We're all guilty of looking for the easiest and quickest fix to a problem, and many of us do not like change. For instance, when my mother was first diagnosed with brain cancer, we were looking at medical recommendations of chemo and radiation, your standard therapy. Our first question to the doctor was, what are some foods that you would suggest we have her eat along with these treatments in order to best prepare her body for the terrible side effects of them? Seems obvious, right? It really absolutely shocked us, the answer that we got, which was pretty much quoted as comfort foods, because we don't expect these to do much besides extend her life for a few months. Obviously, that was very unacceptable and even more so shocking to us.
That's so wild. I know Midwesterners love their comfort food, but if someone is sick,
I mean, it's
come
just
on.
like, as a doctor, you just think like going into a medical clinic that you'd at least be able to have the conversation with them of just like,
Alternative medicine.
not that, just like, I just want some like good stuff. I've got all these things that I'm going to be poisons, essentially, I'm going to be putting into my body.
Yeah.
What are things that I could do to counter that, to boost my immune system? And it was just nothing.
And that's it, exactly. It's just being more mindful about what we're actually putting into our bodies, which can be daunting because we're kind of taught to trust doctors over our own instincts right from an early age. And there is so many different conflicting opinions out there. Add the expense of clean eating and supplements as well as the time it takes to learn about these things, and it just gets a bit overwhelming. It's easy to think we don't have the time to learn considering our hectic lifestyles, but a little bit can go a long way in this topic. So we ask you to stick with us and learn along with us as well.
Yeah. Here's a caveat first up. We're not saying that everyone should go all natural for every condition they experience, but you should be informed about natural alternatives. Whatever your ailment, find out how to treat it naturally. Is there an option? You can start online, or you consult a naturopathic doctor like Dr. K. You can make an informed decision about the long-term impacts of your health, and why not? If you've been in this realm of just taking medicine after medicine and it's not working, at least just consider this.
Yeah, and I can actually attest in my experience with my stomach issues. I've done all of the IBS medications and they didn't really help that much. And I've actually started using probiotics, and I was very reluctant to start them. And I've noticed such a difference. I've talked about it a heap on this series, but I've just noticed such a difference in my personal experience with probiotics.
Yep,
So
it's been really good. But obviously, we want you guys to learn from an expert as always. So let's get to our interview with Dr. Karen DeVore.
Inspiring interview.
So Karen DeVore, or Dr. K as we like to call her, is a naturopathic doctor who studied and received her doctorate at the prestigious Bastyr University, the world's leading university in the natural health sciences. Besides being the chief medical advisor to Okuma Nutritionals, Dr. K also works as the team physician for the Los Sueños International Ironman team. And yes, I was trying to sound very Spanish then. Outside of her professional work, she is a world-class friend and mother.
All right, well, we are here with Karen DeVore, or Dr. K, as we will continue to call her. How are you doing today, doctor?
Doing well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, naturopathic doctors, I think there's a lot of people that might be hearing this term for the first time. What is a naturopathic doctor, and what is the difference between an ND and an MD?
Yeah, great question. So naturopathic medicine is typically considered a distinct system of primary care health. And as a naturopath, we focus on what maybe the public considers a holistic health approach, meaning that we really concentrate on a whole patient wellness profile, emphasizing prevention as well as treatment using the more natural-minded modalities. As you have mentioned previously, it's really important for us to look at underlying causes of a patient's condition. And that just means that we're not just focusing primarily on symptomatic treatment. We are looking at a very whole patient focused profile, and which means that our work is pretty in-depth. And in terms of how a naturopath or a naturopathic doctor, an ND, compares with an MD, which is your traditional medical doctor that most of us grew up seeing in family practice, is that mostly in our treatment approaches. And that means that if you were to go to a naturopathic doc's office with a complaint of fatigue or mood fluctuations or weight management issues, you'll likely be worked up in a lengthy workup that includes diet and lifestyle and past medical history, in addition to lab work. And consequently, the treatment plan is not most likely, but it could involve an herbal formulation and modifications focusing on the foundations of health, in addition to any indicated pharmaceutical treatments or dietary modifications. So it's in terms of training and the practical uses of naturopathic medicine versus the traditional medical model, it's working more on prevention and underlying causes of disease rather than just symptomatic presentations.
Yeah, you're concentrating on the healing as opposed to the getting rid of the symptoms. It's like getting it from the root. That's what I kind of bring from it.
That's in a broad picture. That's
I think the buzzword right now is like upstream medical.
I really have never heard of that.
I mean, that's kind of something that I was just listening to recently, where you're not focusing on like what is creating the problem, related to poverty. Like you can deal with people when they're already poor, but why did an audience of people get poor? That's kind of the way that I think about it. Is that on this right track at all?
Yeah, it is. And, it's what a privileged way to think about things, right, for us kind of on one side. And that, if I was living below the poverty line, my concentration probably wouldn't necessarily be on my cholesterol level and whether or not my kale is organic. But, looking at the prevention of the disease from starting and looking at making very intentional choices and trying to modify our disease path or our health path using less drastic measures is always going to be one of the first steps that a naturopath takes. But really looking at a patient in the entire picture of the patient's profile, including socioeconomic demographic, including home and lifestyle choices, including trauma, including their past medical history. It's all encompassing. And I think that is something that all doctors want to do. But as a naturopath, the way that we are set up to treat patients is very different than the way maybe a medical doc is set up to see a patient, in that we are allotted much more time with our patients. And a standard patient visit could be 60 minutes or sometimes 90 minutes rather than the 15-minute model. And I think it's really important for me to clarify that it's not an adversarial differentiation, but rather an MD and an ND can be very complementary in their training and education focus and specialties. And just to be clear, I think that medical docs, naturopaths, chiropractors, NPs, PharmDs, Chinese medical practitioners, and DOs, they're all uniquely qualified in the ways that our medical peers may not be. And so the fact that we know that no two brains or no two bodies are exactly alike, I think it's important to recognize that no two roads to optimizing health and wellness will be identical. And so their treatments shouldn't be identical. And thus, that's the beauty of integrative medicine.
Yeah. And I guess with your interest in this field of study, that started before you had a family. So how has being a mother now impacted your learning more about what it is that we're actually putting into our bodies, or what it is that you're putting into your children's bodies?
Yeah, this is such a vast topic that I could spend hours on. And you're going to have to kind of rein me in on this. Okay. But
should we make a safe word?
I think,
We'll say, when I say pineapple.
That, really, the short answer is that it's reminded me of the million different small decisions that each one of us make throughout the day that impact our health.
Yeah.
And how important all of those tiny little decisions are. And what I mean by that is that to go from before, to backtrack a little bit, and I'll circle around, it takes 3 months for an egg or sperm to develop in a person's body to the point of readiness for available fertilization. So before conception even happens, the 3 months in somebody else's body already is going to determine your DNA, your health profile.
About that.
Yeah, me
right?
too. That's fascinating.
When you think about that, as a doc and a mom, the responsibility 3 months prior to conception is already huge.
Yeah.
So all of these little things on, am I going to throw down that bag of Lay's potato chips, or is using, this particular bug spray really important? It's not just focusing on one thing, but it's all of the tiny little decisions that we make throughout the day that kind of accumulates to our health profile. And some of the stuff, as a mom, you just got to let go. And some of it you've got to really put your foot down on. Mm-hmm. And I think as a mom and as a doc who's constantly learning, I think the biggest thing is modeling the behaviors, not just for physical health, but also emotional health, modeling proper communication techniques and conflict resolution, all of these things that really, and stress management that really play into a person's health down the line are more valuable than just one single don't eat junk food, rule that I could be regimented about. Yeah. It's all of the tiny little decisions that we make throughout the day. I think that's become more blaring to me, and the importance of those decisions, I guess.
Well, and especially when you take yourself out of the equation and now you're making this, you have the responsibility to these youngins that are running around, and for however much time, you're a full decision maker. And then as they grow older, that kind of starts to slowly wane away before they become their own decision maker. So it becomes from the aspect of, well, I'm now the one that's perfectly and absolutely in charge of everything that this child is putting into their system, to, well, now they're off to school. So now the school, or maybe some friends and sleepovers and stuff like that. So some other people have some say. And then by the time they're off to college and they've got a meal plan or whatever that might be, they're completely on their own. So then it kind of goes from, now you've just kind of hopefully instilled some good habits into them. But I would imagine that it would, neither Lianne and I can have any relation to this, but I would imagine that it has to have a pretty good effect.
Yeah, I think to speak to what you were just mentioning, I think teaching our children to think through a problem and giving them some guidelines and experiences as to all of the different opportunities that those choices will give them, is really important. I will quite frequently say it's just as important for me to teach my children to throw down a big bowl of kale as it is to teach them how to eat sugar properly. Sugar is a part of our world, just like an Xbox or an iPhone. And if I don't teach them how to utilize these resources properly and to establish good boundaries within utilizing these in our everyday world, somebody else will, or they have to do it on their own. So, exposing them to lots of different opportunities to learn, and also to back off and let them throw down on a Snickers bar and then see how they feel, after. It's all
kind of let them learn from themselves. Yeah, and I was lucky enough to be a friend of yours and actually get to live with you for a month or so while you were in school, and that was my introduction to naturopathic medicine, and it was just fascinating for me to learn about it and see some of the stuff that you were studying. But obviously it raised questions. So that's kind of my next question is, what are some barriers that you would say a lot of people who maybe haven't heard of this and they're just trying to understand it better? What are some things that people are like, that question about this field?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest barriers is just, how do I start? It's so overwhelming. What do I do? And I think that's true of lots of different modifications that we attempt to make in life. And it's very overwhelming. Oh my gosh, what supplements? What's the dosage? What am I doing wrong? And because of that, I think people go really hard in one direction and then it's just not sustainable, either financially or, your personal resources, your time, your energy, or they find that they're not having good interactions with their friends groups because they're trying to be so holistic and clean-minded. So a lot of times I think prioritizing what we call the foundations of health is a great first step. And that is, what I mean by that is looking at sleep, hydration, movement or exercise, your relationships, and then your nutrition. And those are all the building blocks to our health. And if you can just start by examining where you are, what you can improve upon, what are your boundaries, your non-negotiables. I'm not going to give up my espresso. I'm not going to give up, my Snickers bar, this is what I'm willing to give up. Or maybe this is where I'm really lacking, or I don't drink enough water, or I don't get good sleep. Just starting with acknowledging where you are and what your non-negotiables are is a great way to start modifying your lifestyle.
Well, it's like anything in life is about compromise, right?
Exactly.
Everything, it's the best way to have a nice balanced life, as the Libra here would like me to mention, balance.
Yeah.
But so all of these things, they're all related to health. That's why you would take these supplements, but healing. So like the whole topic of this episode is about healing. And when I think of the word healing, I think of identifying the root cause of an issue and finding a remedy for that. So first of all, what does healing mean to you? And then in your opinion, what role does the mind play in healing?
Yeah, I think that healing is a process. And I think we often hear of the gift of healing. We wish that for others who are going through a painful time, or you hear that in, self or motivating talks. It's the gift of healing. And it's a really sacred process. And it can be the process of becoming free of an injury or disease. Or it can be, for some, healing means to be cured. But for me, it's the actual process of going from an unbalanced state or disease state for some to a much more health-minded, sustainable state. And I don't mean to be convoluted. Ultimately, we do the root of your disease or dysfunctioning systematic symptom is it's crucial. But for someone, I think where I am as a mom and just in my own process of learning as a physician, I think healing is much more about the process, and it's so multifactorial that although the root cause is really important, it's just a very complicated evolution that a person goes through. And for some, it just means healing means I no longer have stomach pain. And for some, healing means I need to go back to my childhood trauma and retrace those steps and ensure that I am able to express myself. So healing is a multifaceted process of getting from one point to ideally a better point in your health. And I think it's so individualized.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I'm curious about, I had the, I was kind of going through this a little bit, watching with all the trauma that my family's had just over the last few years with my mom.
They've been through a lot, Corey.
And it's
been about some of the hardships, including your mama's passing.
Well, thank you very much. It's been obviously just this amazing learning experience. And we, throughout the process, we dove deeper into naturopathic medicine. And then kind of since her passing, we've had this thing with my dad where he as the caretaker, he just got used to living this life with stress. And after she's passed now and some time has passed, we found that he continued to have these same, he would build stress into his life because it's now become the norm. It's become his habit. So over the last couple of months, since we've had the fortune to be able to spend the time with him, we've tried to help him develop this practice of relieving that, just saying you have control over some of the stress that's on your plate. Let's just take it away, and it's okay not to have all these things going on. And I think throughout that process, some of his actual physical ailments have actually gone away. And I'm just kind of curious if that's something that you've looked at, and if that's something that you kind of find to be more regular, is that people can create these things mentally.
Yeah. First I want to say, like, what a gift you have given your father to just be there and to hold that for him and be a sounding space, because that really is a hard thing to do, not only as somebody's child, an adult child to a grieving parent, but also just in general. So good on you two for doing
just
that.
Very fortunate that we had the time to be able to
we
go
feel
up
like
there.
the lucky ones there. So.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Let's talk about just the physical, how the mind and the body, the internal and external world of our bodies kind of coexist. So, just to give a kind of a generalized example, if you're stressed, physically, your breathing is going to be different. You're not doing these full inhalation and exhalation breaths. You are consequently not getting enough or as much, oxygen. You are doing shallow breathing. And what that does to your posture, as well as your heart rate, is going to be significant and take a toll on your body. But also biochemically, your cortisol, hormonally, your cortisol is spiking in response to the stress or the trauma that's happening around you. So it is circling back around, and your nervous system is also going to respond to it, and that you're going to be in a fight or flight, not only physical posture, but also neurologically and biochemically. Your body is looking for that bear to outrun. And so what happens is that while it's as simple as maybe breathing, biochemically and kind of behind the scenes, your body is in this stressed space. And if you do this over a prolonged period, the muscles start to adapt to holding the body that way. Your spine, your diaphragm becomes kind of cramped. You're presumably maybe not getting all of the other lifestyle components in relaxing, stretching, sleeping well, being hydrated, movement, yoga, enjoying time with friends, all on account of being stressed. So over a prolonged period of time, people have significant physical ailments that are related to something as what we brush off as being stressed. But it is significant. What we experience emotionally is often manifested in what our symptom presentation can be physically. So there is a direct correlation.
Yeah. I know that's something that we've learned in our, we did an episode on food, and it's something that we've found as well, just how important all these different areas of the body are connected to the mind. And there was so much research about gut health and stuff that's linked to the mind as well. And I just think all these links, really you kind of assume that everything starts there, but actually it's just everything's intertwined, isn't it?
It really is.
So taking us over to supplements. So how should supplements play a role in our everyday lives and on our diets? Are there any supplements that everyone should take, or does it kind of vary person to person?
Yeah, great question. I think that to get the best answer, I say go to somebody who is trained in nutrients and supplementation, whether it be an MD, DO, DC, somebody who has proper training that can really assess your personal profile, because we can all get into put somebody in a bad space if I give a broad recommendation, and just that. So that's my disclaimer. That said, I don't think that supplements are required for everyone. And ideally, if a person has a fantastic, healthy foundation for health already built in, they're not necessarily going to be needing to supplement in quite the same way as if somebody who has maybe has a disrupted gut lining or an underlining condition like ulcerative colitis, where they're not, or a condition where they're not able to absorb nutrients properly, are going to need a much different supplementation route. But supplements are just that. They are to supplement where your diet and lifestyle aren't able to fill up completely. So I think we all need something a little bit different, but I will say a blanket statement: the more fruits and vegetables of a diverse color and profile that you can get in your body, the less supplementation that you're going to need. And the more focus that you put on the foundations of health, like I mentioned, sleep, movement, quality relationships, and hydration, the less you will need supplementation. But it's there to simply supplement your established health profile.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, I haven't ever really been a big supplement person.
Yeah. And we should put a disclaimer on people who are like, okay, sick, I can eat my cheeseburger and drink my beer and I'll just take some supplements and I'm fine. That's not how it works.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think, as a doc, you always have to give that disclaimer, but I think, that's kind of, people know that, but I try and stay away from like a one size fits all supplement regime, because two bodies aren't the same and don't need the same.
Yeah, well, that's it. Like Corey and I, we eat the same diet, but I have IBS and I've had gastritis in the past and I've had all these stomach issues. And we can eat the same thing and I'll have like such a stomach ache or I'll feel tired and things like that. And then he'll be completely fine. So, that as an example is supplements, you can eat the same as someone, but it's all dependent on your body.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just, going back to epigenetics, or the way our stress response is different, and therefore we burn out of different nutrients, or you may have an MTHFR issue where you're not methylating things. So, you can really get into trouble following these regimens that are just kind of blanket statements out there, or what people should be doing. Go to somebody who's willing to take an in-depth look at not only your lab work, but your daily lifestyle, and they can help.
Yeah. And I've got a pretty iron stomach, so don't follow my diet. I'm wondering about, so this is something that I kind of was doing without even knowing that I was doing it, and it's intermittent fasting. So a couple of years ago is when I discovered this, and I think I heard it on maybe like a Joe Rogan podcast or somewhere like that. And then I realized just that my lifestyle was kind of a 14-10 intermittent fast, just naturally the way that I was living, because I don't really usually wake up and eat right away.
Right.
And then I started being more mindful of it and just being like, okay, let's try and do like a 16-8. And so I've been really pretty consistently doing that for the last couple of years, and I've felt pretty good doing it. I just feel like my brain's a little bit sharper overall. But I'm wondering if that's something that you've looked into, and if it's something that you recommend.
Yeah, again, disclaimer, got to do what works for you and what you feel, where you see and feel the difference and the changes. I don't think intermittent fasting is across the board for everyone. But that said, it's hard to ignore how humans have evolved, and we evolved in times of fast and famine. We have we evolved from time periods where we were hunters and gatherers. So intermittent fasting, while it wasn't this organized way of eating, it's a very, very much a part of of human history. It's very much ingrained in the way that our bodies know to work. So, and you see it even in predominant religions, the idea of fasting and prayer. It's very much a part of our culture, but also our makeup and our ancestral components that created our bodies to be the way that they are. So that said, I think it's while not ideal for every single person, I think it is an incredible tool to really understand and experiment with. And I think the component that people forget about intermittent fasting is the predictability or the consistency of it is what really is helpful. And by that, I mean not going out and getting that 3 o'clock in the morning piece of pizza after hitting the bar with your buddies, and then being like, oh, well, I fast until 9 o'clock every morning. So the next day you start throwing down on pancakes and a hangover breakfast. It's the idea of just being consistent, and that you are training your body and allowing your body to have the turnover processes and all the beneficial biochemical things that happen when we are doing the intermittent fasting period. Allow that to happen properly and consistently, so that you can kind of glean the health effects, down the line. But yeah, it's a great tool. And I think that for a lot of adults, the idea of fasting, especially again in the US, where consumerism and gluttony tends to be predominant, it's a great thing to put ourselves in check and to just remind ourselves of being intentional in what we're putting in our bodies.
As well as what it's like to be hungry, because I just feel like in our societies, people are just like, oh, I eat because it's this time. You're not actually hungry.
That phrase "I'm starving" really gets tossed around pretty lately.
Oh, yeah. I am guilty of that one as well.
And I'll give Lianne a shout out here, because she's in her mid-20s, and there's no way I could have done intermittent fasting in my mid-20s, and she's been pretty consistent.
I've been doing it since I was about 16, but I was always I've always been an athlete, in school or in college and stuff, and I've always been to the gym, and it was something, it was not intentional so much for the health effects. It was very for the wrong reasons, like, oh, I want to look good. But it was also just really easy for me, because I like to sleep late, unlike Corey. So if I eat at 8 o'clock at night and I don't eat until 12 o'clock the next day, that's fine. So I've only actually gone a few hours without eating.
Yeah, just sleep for
hours. Just sleep for 10 to 12 hours and you're
How
okay.
wonderful. How wonderful. But to your point, I think that if we look at the way that, and I'm not saying let's model teenagers and their health practices by any means, but if we look at the body's natural rhythm through the maturation process, we see that intermittent fasting is something that happens on its own. And then whether it's cultural, traditional, we kind of start saying, oh, 8 o'clock in the morning, we got to eat that breakfast before you make that bus, or eat breakfast is the most important part of the day, thanks to Kellogg's, marketing schemes, or, but if we just look at the body's natural rhythm, it's oftentimes that teenagers don't want to eat breakfast. Or I don't know about you, but I certainly grew up with my parents throwing down a cup of coffee and being completely satisfied with that until the noontime, moment where they were going to break their fast. And that wasn't intermittent fasting. That was just the way of the 70s. So,
just habit.
I think we see, like I mentioned before, we not only do we see this in religious spaces and evolutionarily, but we see it in the body's natural rhythms. And sometimes we, as a culture, we just beat that out of them. So I think we're doing a better job in returning to mindfulness and the intentionality of health practices.
And you're not only just a naturopath. Since 2013, you have been the team physician for the Los Sueños Ironman team. I hope I'm not butchering that pronunciation.
No, you're perfect.
Yes. And so what changes did you implement with the athletes, and what differences have they had over time?
So, great question. An Ironman or an athlete, let alone a triathlete, is a very dedicated, different breed of person.
Human.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
A humanoid, like I lovingly refer to them as. And but the biggest thing is that I have just really discussed the importance of, and I don't mean to belabor the point, but this is my soapbox, is the foundations of health. Taking days off, allowing for proper recovery, proper hydration, getting our fuel from a whole foods diet rather than just a protein bar or goo on the go, allowing for some cross training and that's not focused on speed training or climbing on mountains, that's allowing for the muscles to work in different ways and complementary and synergistic approaches. So really just refocusing some of the athletes on prioritizing these simple concepts that we've been told since childhood: to stretch, to drink water in the morning, to sleep, allow our bodies to recover, to take our days off, to have the day of rest, to stress management. Just to refocus and prioritize the foundations of health has made a huge impact, not only on performance, but on just the joy of training. And, this is like a very competitive, even at the most basic amateur level, the amount of hours that a triathlete will put in to training and to thinking about a race and to preparing for it physically, and just reorganizing resources and time is enormous. So just the idea of prioritizing stress management is a big deal. My brother is on the Ironman team, and he is so focused, but sometimes gets lost in the focus and the training and stops having a good time. So I asked him to go to a yoga studio. I asked him to do dance classes. We started working on a lot of mind-body connecting and thinking about it. It sounds very silly, but having a theme song. We always, the American way is seeing Rocky run up the stairs and having that awesome song. There are times in our lives that, not when we're not running a triathlon, that we just have to focus and get through and push through to the other side. And a theme song, man, it gets us through every time. So just having,
I'm so curious.
Yeah,
what's your theme song?
It's called Sally, and it is just like a silly little song that I have worked out to for the last 5 years, and it is something that I do burpees to, something that I plank to. But my body, why this works is that my body knows when that song comes on, for 5 minutes, I'm going to be in grueling hell. So my brain kicks in and says, you got this. It's going to be horrendous for these 5 minutes. But I can hear the song track in my head, and my body and brain do this incredible synergistic thing. And my adrenaline spikes, my heart rate responds. And all of a sudden, this glucose dump happens, this endorphin dump happens, and I get this great response to this theme song. And for 5 minutes and however many seconds, I can push through. So that is kind of some of the little tricks that we've just prioritized with the Ironman team. And again, not only has the timing and their performance increased, but just the joy of the process has really improved. And that's what it's all for, right?
In the end, that's hopefully what it is. Yeah. So we've got the team physician for Los Sueños Ironman team, naturopathic doctor, and also an amazing wife and mother.
Thank you.
And also chief medical advisor to Okuma Nutritionals. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit about Okuma Nutritionals and obviously the big product you all have there, one of many, is Oolong tea. And what is that and what does that do?
Yeah, thank you for for tooting my horn there. That made me feel wonderful. I appreciate it.
We can play a theme song in the background.
Yeah. I'll be sure to email you my little my theme song there.
Please do.
So let's see. So Okuma Nutritionals started off as a company that had a 20-year track record for selling oolong tea, which is a sustainably grown and really high quality oolong tea. And as I think the world knows, tea is considered one of the oldest medicines, not to mention the most widely consumed beverage, surprisingly above beer and coffee. So it has just this incredible historical use, and it has so much science behind it to support. Oolong specifically has a lot of science to support its great contributions to health. So Oolong was a specific varietal that that Okuma Nutritionals specialized in. So with that track record and for quality and sustainability and excellence, really, we were able to start introducing some new formulations that were really not only in high demand, but really easy to incorporate into daily use. So having a great company to back formulations that that exceed really industry standards, but also allow for general public use, it is a rare thing. In that, most of us grow up getting our multivitamin from a big box store, and we can't guarantee the quality in those products. So being able to have a mother company that could really help get sustainable and quality products out to the public is a really great thing to be a part of.
Yeah. It's like to be that change that's out there, because so many times I've been in the supermarkets and I'm like, wow, like I don't actually trust what I'm reading on this box. Like I just feel like they're missing things out. So that's really awesome that you guys are actually being completely transparent and healthy with your products. So that's amazing to hear.
It's a big difference in between supplements that are mass produced and medical grade supplementation. And because of that big difference, there's a big price difference, and trying to kind of have the best of both worlds is a really cool thing to be a part of.
Yeah. So aside from Oolong tea, of course, if you could recommend one change to any of our listeners to improve their overall health, what would that be?
Right. Great question. And surprisingly, it has nothing to do with supplementation, but I think it's movement. I think it is so underrated, and movement can be in the form of a yoga practice, or if you're one of those crazy humans that enjoy sprinting and climbing mountains, by all means, but simple as stretching and allowing our bodies to get the benefits from biochemically and physically from just daily movement and increasing your heart rate. I think it is the best use of anyone's time throughout the day. I think it is something that comes back to us tenfold, if not more, by just having a little bit of mindfulness and intentionality in our movement every day.
Corey's given himself a pat on the back here, because he's been telling me since we've met, stretching will keep you young. Stretching's the thing that you need to do, because I never stretch.
The older that I keep getting, Karen.
Good. I mean, just the biochemical feedback that you get once you start moving every day, it's, I mean, there's nothing better than endorphins. So, I just think it is a very underutilized medicine. So that is.
And I'll give a very recent example to just kind of prove your point, is that I woke up today just mentally just not fully being there. And as we were getting closer and honing in on this conversation with you, I was just like, okay, I just kind of want to be on my game here, but I'm just not feeling it. So Lianne and I went for a little lunchtime, little 6-mile mountain bike ride.
Oh, that's great.
Nothing too strenuous, but just got outside in the sun and got our bodies moving. And I came back, took a shower, and just started feeling really good. So yeah, if you're not moving too much and you're listening to this, go out, put this podcast on, take a walk.
And the reality is, in a lot of places in the world, people are not able to leave their homes, right? And it's really easy to kind of get down on yourself and be like, I haven't been able to go to the gym, or, I usually walk to work, or, movement isn't something that I'm able to do. But just prioritizing movement in our own homes is can be incredibly helpful, mindful, and valuable, really, not only emotionally and cognitively, but like I said, biochemically, it's a catalyst for all the good things that happen in our bodies.
Yeah.
Really good point. Dr. K, thank you so much.
We appreciate it very much.
Your
Thank you. Great
experience,
opportunity.
your knowledge, and we're so excited to just share this with you. And it was great, obviously, for me personally to just be able to reconnect for a minute. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate you guys.
Let's unpack that.
All right. Well, thank you so much to Dr. K. As I'm sure you might have picked up on that, Dr. Karen has been one of my good friends for about 10 years. Although we've gone our separate ways over the last few, I was able to be living in her house for a few weeks while she was in the middle of her education as a naturopathic doctor. So I kind of got to bear witness to that, and it really just kind of got my mind. It introduced me to that idea of alternative medicines and stuff, and I've been just kind of curious about it and interested in it more and more. What about you, Lee?
Yeah, I think it's quite fascinating to hear her advice, because she's not saying, oh, you should just take all of these supplements and you should do this. She's saying educate yourself on what your body's like. But, I know people who, you go in, open their drawer and they have about 15 different supplements, and they've tried to get me on board with it all. And I'm kind of like, well, I eat quite a balanced diet. Do I really need all of this stuff? Yeah. And then as I've gotten older, obviously I'm more aware of what kind of things that I will need.
Yep.
I'm just a bit too cheap to buy them, but now I'm growing up, maybe I'll buy them.
And I like that practical advice of just movement. I just think that that's just such a easy thing to do. Even if you are in quarantine, like she said, you can just kind of move throughout your house, just do some things.
Which I can really attest to, guys, the home workout situation, like just doing like a little circuit in your garden or your yard if you're American, or your living room. It's like I've been getting better results at doing home workouts than I usually do at the gym.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good.
Yeah, really good stuff.
Take it further.
So taking it further, if you do want to get some more information on Dr. K and Wulong Tea, do make sure you check out the website okumanutritionals.com. We will have it in the show notes, but basically it's the company website Okuma, and they have a bunch of different products and all recommended by Dr. K herself.
Yeah, some great blog articles and everything that she has written as well. So a good resource of information if you're just kind of curious about learning more about this. And then obviously if you're interested, can't hurt to try out some of the products that they might have on there. Our executive producer is a big fan of Dr. Michael Greger, who we have mentioned in a previous episode. Nutritionfacts.org is his website, and he has a large library of nutrition and health videos there. He uses an evidence-based approach to healing while promoting sensible, natural solutions.
And if you just don't want to read, you just want to watch a movie, why don't you watch That Vitamin movie, or Vitamin, depending on where you're from. So that's free on Amazon Prime Videos or free on thatvitaminmovie.com. Go check it out. Learn some stuff.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode on healing. Lots of great information on how we really can cut down our pharmaceutical usage. You can check out Dr. K's Naturopathic Tea Company at okumanutritionals.com. Not only do they have great supplement products and tea, but also an abundance of articles written by Dr. K herself.
And remember to check out episode 11, where we are going to be taking that next step and looking at mindful exercise. We're going to be exploring what this actually all means, what's the difference between regular exercise and mindful exercise, ways you can do it at different paces, and we have not one, but 2 interviews. Mr. Voiceover Guy, you're up.
Thanks, guys. Subscribe now to the Forever Break podcast on your favorite platform: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and more. If you enjoyed this episode, help us out and leave a 5-star review. And remember, you can find all the juicy details discussed in this episode in the show notes at foreverbreak.com/podcast.